The night was supposed to be loud, flashy, and forgettable, the kind of club evening where celebrity faces blend into strobe lights and bass-heavy music. But instead, it turned into a scene no one inside that packed venue will forget. Fans are shocked, security is still tight-lipped, and whispers are spreading fast about what really went down when Kirk Frost and Mendeces Harris crossed paths under one roof. What began as icy stares and tense body language quickly spiraled into a full-blown clash that left emotions running high and the entire club on edge. Witnesses say the air changed the moment Kirk walked in. Conversations stalled, phones subtly lifted, people could sense something brewing. Mendeces, already surrounded by friends, noticed the shift immediately. Old resentment, unresolved issues, and bruised egos seemed to collide all at once. Voices were raised, accusations flew, security tried to step in, but the damage was already done. This was not just a disagreement. This was years of tension bubbling over in public. And then came the moment that stunned everyone. Young Jock, watching the chaos unfold, made a decision that changed the night entirely. As the argument grew louder and more personal, Jock allegedly pulled out his phone and called the police. Fans are asking why. Was he protecting the club, trying to stop something worse, or sending a message of his own? Some say it was fear. Others say it was betrayal. By the time sirens were rumored to be on the way, the crowd was buzzing, sides were being chosen, and reputations were hanging in the balance. What really sparked the fight? What words crossed the line? And why did this clash feel so personal that it pulled law enforcement into a celebrity night out? Stay right here, because the story behind this explosive confrontation is far messier, more emotional, and more shocking than anyone expected. The bass was so heavy it felt like it was pushing against everyone's chest, rattling glasses and nerves at the same time. Kirk was already irritated before he even reached the VIP section. He had heard Mendeces was in the building, and that alone was enough to sour his mood. There was history there, unspoken tension, half-resolved arguments that never really stayed buried. Kirk tried to play it cool, nodding at familiar faces, forcing a smile that did not reach his eyes, but inside his thoughts were racing. He told himself he would ignore it, that tonight was about business and appearances, not old beef. But the moment he locked eyes with Mendeces across the room, that plan collapsed. Mendeces noticed Kirk at the exact same second. His laughter cut off mid-sentence as his jaw tightened. Friends around him sensed the shift immediately. Someone leaned in and whispered something, but Mendeces barely heard it. All he could see was Kirk standing there like he owned the place, shoulders back, chin raised, wearing that familiar look that always felt like a challenge. Emotions ran high without a single word being spoken. The music kept playing, but the tension between them was louder than any speaker in the club. Kirk took a step closer, not aggressively, just enough to make a point. Mendeces did not move. The space between them shrank, and suddenly the air felt thick. Kirk broke the silence first, his voice low but sharp, asking if Mendeces had something to say now that they were face to face. Mendeces laughed, a short, humorless sound, and replied that he did not owe Kirk anything, especially not respect. Nearby fans leaned in, pretending not to stare while recording everything in their minds. Words started stacking on top of each other fast. Kirk accused Mendeces of talking behind his back, of running his mouth to mutual friends and stirring drama for attention. Mendeces fired back, saying Kirk had been doing damage control for years and could not stand being called out. The argument was no longer private. People nearby heard every word, every accusation. Faces turned. Phones came out. Fans are shocked at how quickly things escalated. Security hovered, unsure whether to intervene or let it cool down. Mendeces took another sip of his drink, then placed the glass down with a little too much force. He stepped forward, closing the gap completely, and told Kirk to stop pretending this was about gossip when it was really about ego. Kirk's expression hardened. He brought up loyalty, betrayal, and moments when he felt Mendeces crossed lines that could not be uncrossed. Each sentence felt heavier than the last. Around them, friends began choosing sides. Some pulled Kirk back slightly, whispering that this was not the place. Others stood behind Mendeces, arms folded, eyes locked on Kirk like they were ready for whatever came next. The club felt divided down the middle, an invisible line drawn by old alliances and grudges. Even the DJ seemed to sense something was off, lowering the volume just enough for raised voices to carry. Mendeces accused Kirk of playing victim while quietly manipulating situations to make himself look clean. Kirk snapped back, saying Mendeces loved chaos and always hid behind a tough image instead of taking responsibility. Their voices rose. Insults slipped in between accusations. What started as sharp words turned personal, dragging family, past mistakes, and public embarrassment into the spotlight. The family was left divided long before this night, but now it was happening in real time, in front of strangers. That was when young Jock entered the picture more directly. He had been watching from a distance, uneasy, shifting his weight as the argument spiraled. Jock knew both men well enough to recognize when things were about to cross a line. He stepped closer, trying to defuse the situation with humor at first, telling them they were doing too much. Neither Kirk nor Mendeces listened. The tension had its own momentum now. Kirk pointed a finger at Mendices, his voice shaking with anger, saying this was exactly why people could not trust him. Mendices slapped Kirk's hand away and told him not to point like that unless he was ready for consequences. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Security finally moved in, hands out, trying to create space. Fans are shocked at how raw and unfiltered the moment felt. Young Jock's expression changed. The jokes stopped. He glanced around, noticing how packed the club was, how many phones were recording, how close this was to turning into something much worse. He pulled out his phone, stepping away slightly, eyes never leaving the scene. Kirk was still shouting, Mendices shouting back, both men talking over each other, neither willing to back down. As Jock moved toward a quieter corner, his thumb hovered over the screen. He hesitated, clearly conflicted, but the noise behind him made the decision feel urgent. The argument had reached a boiling point, and there was no sign it was slowing down. Inside the VIP section, friendships were cracking, tempers were flaring, and the night was slipping out of control. No one noticed exactly when Jock made the call, only that everything felt different afterward, like the countdown had already begun. The morning news cycle picks up the story like fuel meeting fire, and in this fictional world the anchors speak carefully while the tickers scream speculation. Fans are shocked as panels debate whether the leaked Epstein recruitment video is real or a stitched illusion meant to mislead. Erica watches from her kitchen, coffee untouched, as familiar faces question her integrity with polished concern. A former mentor appears on screen, shaking their head and saying they never expected this from her, and the words cut deeper than any headline. Emotions ran high when a producer hints that more insiders are ready to talk, promising exclusive interviews that will peel back the layers. Erica's phone buzzes again, this time with a message from an old pageant rival who writes, "You should have seen this coming." Erica deletes it without replying, her hands trembling. The fictional narrative shifts to a crowded studio where a dramatized whistleblower claims the video proves Erica was a front, a smiling intermediary who opened doors without asking questions. The claim lands hard even without evidence. Social feeds light up with slow-motion replays of Erica's past speeches, viewers convinced that pauses and smiles now reveal hidden intent. Her father calls, voice tight, asking why neighbors are staring and why relatives are calling with accusations. The family was left divided again as some urge Erica to fight back publicly while others beg her to disappear until the storm passes. Erica tells them silence feels like surrender, but speaking feels like stepping into a trap. In a quiet scene, Erica meets a longtime friend who once celebrated her crown like a shared victory. The friend's eyes search her face for reassurance, and finally asks, "Did you ever know any of this?" Erica answers with a firm no, her voice breaking as she explains how symbols are used, how faces are borrowed to legitimize rooms they never control. The friend wants to believe her but admits the video makes it hard. That doubt hangs between them, heavier than anger. Fans are shocked when screenshots of their meeting leak online, captioned as secret damage control. Erica realizes privacy has vanished, replaced by an audience hungry for confession. The fictional leak machine keeps turning. A tabloid posts a timeline alleging Erica attended events she barely remembers, reframed as clandestine gatherings. Commentators accuse her of selective memory. Erica's lawyer warns her that truth moves slower than lies and advises restraint. Still, Erica drafts a statement at 3 in the morning, rewriting every line until it sounds less defensive, more human. She deletes it anyway. Emotions ran high as another former acquaintance releases a vague audio clip, claiming Erica once joked about power and access. The clip lacks context, but context no longer matters. Outrage fills the gaps. As the story deepens, Erica's mother appears in a dramatized call-in interview, defending her daughter with raw emotion. She says Erica was raised to trust institutions and believe in opportunity, not manipulation. The host thanks her politely and then asks whether innocence can coexist with benefit. The question lingers unanswered. The family was left divided by the interview, with some praising the courage and others fearing it poured gasoline on the fire. Erica comforts her mother afterward, assuring her none of this is her fault, even as she wonders how blame spreads so easily. In this imagined world, a counter-narrative emerges. Supporters circulate posts arguing the Epstein label is being weaponized to destroy women who rose too quickly. They point out the absence of proof and the convenience of timing. Detractors accuse them of denial. Fans are shocked by how vicious the arguments become, friendships ending over comment threads. Erica reads a message from a young fan who writes that seeing her dragged like this makes success feel dangerous. The message breaks her composure, and she cries for the first time since the leak. The tension escalates when a late-night show teases a bombshell interview scheduled for the next episode. The guest is billed as someone who knows Erica's secrets. Erica's lawyer advises a preemptive response, but Erica hesitates, fearing the trap of reacting to shadows. She remembers the day she won the crown, the cheers and cameras, the promise that visibility meant safety. Now visibility feels like exposure. The episode airs with dramatic music, but the guest offers only insinuation, repeating rumors as if they are revelations. Still, the damage lands. Emotions ran high as viewers argue whether the absence of proof is itself suspicious. As night falls again, Erica stands alone on her balcony, city lights flickering like 1,000 watching eyes. She wonders who leaked the video and why they chose her. A text arrives from an unknown number saying more footage exists and truth will surface soon. Fear and resolve mix in her chest. She knows the story is tightening around her, pulling threads from every direction, and she braces herself for whatever comes next, aware that in this fabricated drama, survival may depend on reclaiming her own voice before it is rewritten again. The doors at the front of the club swung open and a wave of noise rushed in from outside, mixing with the tension already choking the room. Even before anyone officially announced it, everyone knew the police had arrived. The energy shifted instantly from reckless to fearful. Some people backed away like they wanted to disappear into the walls. Others stood frozen, phones still raised, capturing every second. Fans are shocked at how quickly the mood flipped from aggressive to panicked. Kirk was the first to fully process what this meant. His anger drained into something colder, more calculating. He stopped yelling and straightened his jacket, trying to regain control of how he looked. But his eyes kept darting toward young Jock. Mendices, on the other hand, looked insulted more than afraid. He shook his head slowly, laughing under his breath, saying this was unbelievable. He accused Jock of turning a personal issue into a legal one, crossing a line that could never be uncrossed. Young Jock finally spoke up, his voice firm but strained. He said nobody was listening and things were getting out of hand. He said he did what he thought was necessary to keep people safe. Mendices snapped back, asking since when calling the police on friends was considered protection. Kirk jumped in, saying Jock had no right to make that decision for everyone else. The accusations piled up, shifting away from the original argument and onto betrayal. Security tried to calm everyone down, urging cooperation, telling them to keep their voices down. Kirk's friends crowded around him, whispering advice, some telling him to leave immediately, others saying staying would make him look guilty. Mendices' circle was just as divided. One friend told him to relax and let it go. Another fueled the fire, saying this was proof that Kirk and Jock never had his back. When the officers finally stepped inside, the club fell nearly silent. All eyes turned toward them. The flashing lights outside painted the walls in blue and red, giving the scene an unreal, almost staged feeling. The officers spoke calmly, asking what happened, scanning faces, assessing the damage. No one rushed to answer at first. It felt like everyone was waiting to see who would speak and whose story would set the tone. Young Jock stepped forward, explaining that an argument had escalated and he was worried it could turn physical. Kirk immediately interrupted, saying it was just words, nothing more. Mendices laughed sharply and said funny how it was just words until the police showed up. Emotions ran high again, but this time they were restrained by fear and pride instead of rage. Fans nearby whispered theories to each other. Some said Kirk had gone too far. Others said Mendices had been looking for a confrontation all night. Many questioned Jock's loyalty, wondering if this move would permanently fracture relationships that were already fragile. The family was left divided in a way that felt permanent, not just for the night but for the future. One officer asked if anyone had been threatened or touched. Security confirmed there was no physical fight, just a heated verbal clash. That seemed to deflate some of the tension. Kirk exhaled slowly, rubbing his temples. Mendices crossed his arms, staring at the floor, jaw clenched. Jock stood off to the side, suddenly looking very alone. As the officers spoke with the club manager and security, Kirk took the opportunity to address Mendices directly, his voice quieter now but still sharp. He said this did not have to end like this, that everything did not need to be aired out in front of strangers. Mendices looked up at him and said it ended the moment trust was broken. He said some lines, once crossed, do not fade with time. The officers decided there was no need for arrests but insisted the parties separate and leave the venue. Relief mixed with humiliation swept through the room. Some fans booed softly, disappointed there would be no dramatic ending. Others sighed, glad it had not gotten worse. Kirk was escorted toward one exit, Mendices toward another, their paths deliberately kept apart. As Kirk walked out, he passed young Jock without stopping. He did not speak, did not even look directly at him, but the silence between them was louder than their earlier shouting. Mendices paused near the door on his side, turning back just long enough to say that this was not over. His voice echoed slightly in the now quiet club. Outside, the night air felt heavy. Sirens faded as officers wrapped up their presents. Groups formed on the sidewalk, dissecting what they had just witnessed. Fans are shocked at how much damage was done without a single punch thrown. Inside, staff cleaned spilled drinks and overturned chairs, erasing evidence of the chaos, but the emotional mess lingered. Kirk got into his car, staring straight ahead, replaying every word in his mind. Mendices drove off in the opposite direction, anger simmering beneath a calm exterior. Young Jock stood back for a moment, watching both cars disappear, knowing the call he made would follow him far longer than the night itself. The confrontation was over, but the fallout was just beginning, and everyone involved could feel it settling in, heavy and unavoidable. By the next morning, the story had already taken on a life of its own. Phones buzzed non-stop as clips from the club spread across group chats and fan pages. People dissected every gesture, every facial expression, every pause that hinted at something deeper. Fans are shocked not just by the argument itself, but by how many relationships seemed to fracture in a single night. Kirk woke up to missed calls and messages from people asking for his side, warning him that the narrative was already being written without him. Mendices, meanwhile, sat quietly, scrolling through comments with a tight jaw. Some fans praised him for standing his ground. Others accused him of instigating the entire situation. He replayed the moment young Jock stayed silent when asked if he called the police, and that silence burned more than any insult Kirk had thrown. To him, that was the real betrayal, not the shouting, not the accusations, but the choice to involve outsiders in something that felt personal. Young Jock faced his own storm. Messages poured in questioning his loyalty, his motives, his judgment. Some friends told him he did the right thing, saying the situation could have turned dangerous. Others said he crossed an unforgivable line. Jock tried to explain himself in private conversations, repeating that he feared things would escalate, that he acted out of concern. But doubt lingered, and every explanation seemed to create more questions. Later that day, Kirk finally spoke to a close friend, his voice low and tired. He admitted the argument went too far, but insisted it never needed police involvement. He said the humiliation stung more than the anger. Being separated by security, watched by officers, and whispered about online made him feel exposed. He wondered aloud who he could actually trust if things unraveled that fast in public. Mendices had his own conversations, telling those closest to him that the night confirmed what he had suspected for a long time. He said respect had been missing long before the club, and now it was gone completely. He talked about loyalty, about how certain moves reveal more than years of words ever could. The family was left divided, with some urging forgiveness and others saying distance was the only option. Fans continued to argue online, choosing sides, posting theories, turning moments into memes and headlines. Some insisted Kirk's calm exit proved maturity. Others said Mendices' refusal to back down showed strength. Many focused on Jock, debating whether he was a responsible adult or a snake in disguise. Emotions ran high across the internet, feeding the drama far beyond the walls of the club. Behind the scenes, mutual friends attempted damage control. Texts were sent suggesting private meetings, neutral spaces, calm conversations away from cameras. Kirk considered it briefly, then hesitated. Mendices dismissed the idea outright, saying some conversations only reopen wounds. Jock was willing to talk but unsure anyone would listen. Each man stood on his own island, surrounded by noise but isolated in thought. Days passed, and the tension did not fade. Interviews were hinted at, statements were drafted and deleted. Every move felt loaded. Kirk worried about how this would affect his image and his family. Mendices worried about being painted as the villain in someone else's story. Jock worried that one decision made in a moment of fear would redefine how people saw him forever. The club incident became a reference point, a shorthand for broken trust. Whenever their names appeared together, fans expected sparks. Promoters quietly adjusted guest lists. Invitations became selective. Even casual encounters felt charged, like unfinished sentences hanging in the air. What started as an argument over old issues had reshaped dynamics in ways no one fully predicted. Late one night, Kirk sat alone, replaying the first moment he saw Mendices across the room. He wondered if walking away then could have changed everything. Mendices, in his own space, thought about the laugh he gave before things exploded, questioning whether pride had blinded him. Young Jock stared at his phone, scrolling past debates about his character, wishing he could explain the weight of that split-second choice. No apologies were issued, no public reconciliation happened. Instead, silence filled the gaps where words might have been. Fans are shocked by how unresolved everything remains, how quickly unity turned into distance. The confrontation did not end with a fight or an arrest, but with something quieter and heavier, a shared understanding that things would never go back to how they were. And as the story continued to circulate, one truth became clear to everyone watching. That night at the club was not just about raised voices or a call to the police. It was about trust tested in public, about lines crossed under flashing lights, and about the kind of fallout that lingers long after the music stops. As the week unfolded, the tension only intensified. Kirk and Mendices were both spotted at separate events, each surrounded by friends, each radiating an air of guarded anger. Fans are shocked at how every appearance seemed to reference the club incident without a single word being spoken. Every social media post, every photo, every story was analyzed, every caption dissected for hidden meanings. Speculation became a sport, and everyone had an opinion. The internet buzzed with theories about alliances, secrets, and what really went down that night. Young Jock tried to maintain a low profile, but it was impossible. People approached him at every turn, asking about the call he made, questioning his motives. He smiled, deflected, and tried to stay calm, but inside, he wrestled with guilt and pride. Some nights he replayed the scene over and over, wondering if he had made the right decision, and if the club would have erupted into violence without him stepping in. The weight of responsibility pressed on him like nothing he had ever felt before. Kirk, meanwhile, was not silent. He reached out to a few close friends, venting his frustration over how things had spiraled. He insisted that Mendices had provoked him, that the old issues were being dragged out deliberately, and that young Jock's intervention had escalated the situation in the worst possible way. Kirk's voice was tense, raw with emotion, and for the first time, he admitted that seeing the police arrive in the club felt humiliating, like a private matter had been exposed to the world. Mendices had his own side of the story, which he shared selectively. To some, he described Kirk as unpredictable and dangerous, accusing him of being manipulative and petty. He said Jock's call had complicated everything, but in a way, it confirmed what he already suspected: trust was fragile, and not everyone in their circle could be counted on. He emphasized loyalty, betrayal, and the weight of past grievances, painting the argument as more than just a single night gone wrong. Friends and family on both sides were caught in the crossfire. Text chains buzzed non-stop, whispers filled hallways. People were torn between advising forgiveness and urging distance. Emotions ran high, loyalties were questioned, and minor disputes exploded into arguments of their own. The family was left divided in ways that seemed permanent, each side convinced they had been wronged or betrayed, and the night at the club became a symbol of deeper fractures that had always existed. Additionally, fans began to speculate on the words that had been exchanged. Some clips surfaced online, showing Kirk pointing a finger and shouting about respect and betrayal. Other snippets captured Mendices accusing Kirk of hiding behind an image of civility while manipulating friends. Viewers debated who was in the right, who had lost composure first, and what hidden tensions had fueled the confrontation. Emotions ran high not just among the participants, but across the fanbase as well. As the drama persisted, Kirk considered making a statement but hesitated. He feared it would make him look defensive, or worse, inflame things further. Mendices toyed with the idea of a social media post but ultimately decided silence was more powerful. Jock, caught in the middle, felt like the decisions of one night had trapped him between two worlds, each angry and disappointed in their own way. Meanwhile, industry insiders whispered about consequences. Promoters were cautious, appearances were scrutinized, sponsorships and invitations were quietly adjusted. The ripple effect of that single night was enormous. Even those not directly involved felt its influence. The argument was no longer a private matter, it had become a benchmark for drama, loyalty, and celebrity tension. The fallout would continue to shape interactions and perceptions for months, if not years. Late at night, Kirk reflected privately, replaying every word, every gesture. He questioned whether pride had cost him more than he realized. Mendices did the same, reviewing the event like a strategist, trying to predict the next moves. Young Jock lay awake, thinking about the consequences of a single call, the way his choice had reshaped relationships, and how people might never trust him the same way again. The club incident remained the central point of discussion across fan pages, interviews, and private conversations. Nobody could agree on who was right or wrong. Some argued Kirk had been provoked. Others said Mendices had been patient for too long. Jock's role was debated endlessly, with accusations of betrayal and praise for foresight tangled together. The story had expanded far beyond the original event, and everyone involved felt its weight pressing down on them, unrelenting, constant, unavoidable. The days stretched into weeks, and the aftermath of that fateful night at the club only grew more complicated. Every sighting of Kirk or Mendices sparked renewed speculation. Fans are shocked at how even casual outings became scrutinized, with every gesture, smile, or glare analyzed for hidden meaning. Social media exploded with debates, theories, and accusations, each clip or photo adding fuel to a fire that refused to die. Young Jock, once a quiet observer, now found himself at the center of a storm he never expected, every conversation reminding him of the call he had made and the irreversible impact it had. Kirk attempted to reclaim some semblance of normalcy, scheduling interviews and public appearances, carefully curating every word to avoid further escalation. He spoke vaguely about misunderstandings, carefully avoiding names, but the public was relentless. Fans dissected every phrase, turning every nuance into speculation. He realized quickly that controlling the narrative was nearly impossible. Every statement, every post, every interaction risked twisting the story further, making him appear defensive or guilty, regardless of his intent. Mendices approached the aftermath differently. He maintained a composed exterior in public, letting others initiate the conversations about the incident. Privately, he vented to close friends, recounting the night in detail, emphasizing Kirk's provocations and Jock's interference. He framed the story as a lesson in loyalty and boundaries, portraying himself as the one who had stayed calm under pressure, while exposing the cracks in relationships around him. Friends nodded, some sympathized, others questioned whether he was spinning the narrative too far. Young Jock, on the other hand, felt isolated despite his attempts to explain himself. Some allies defended his decision, acknowledging the potential danger had the police not been called. Yet others saw it as an overreach, accusing him of betrayal. Jock replayed the incident repeatedly in his mind, recalling the exact moment he dialed the number, the faces frozen, the tension snapping. He wondered if he had saved the night or simply complicated it beyond repair. As social media posts and rumors multiplied, new layers of drama emerged. Some fans claimed they had inside sources confirming private arguments leading up to the club incident. Whispers of secret alliances, long-standing grudges, and untold personal histories became fodder for endless speculation. Each rumor seemed plausible enough to stir excitement, making it nearly impossible to separate fact from exaggeration. The drama now had a life of its own, independent of Kirk, Mendices, or Jock. Both Kirk and Mendices began receiving texts and calls from industry insiders, asking about possible collaborations or appearances. Everyone was aware of the tension, and some saw it as an opportunity for ratings, clicks, and attention. The reality of celebrity drama meant that even conflict could become currency, but it came with the heavy price of public scrutiny. The family was left divided, with some members urging reconciliation, others insisting on distance. The emotional toll was visible in every interaction. Additionally, fans dissected video snippets frame by frame, focusing on micro-expressions, tone, and body language. Every finger point, every raised brow, every slight smirk became a point of debate. Kirk's gestures were described as defensive yet strategic. Mendices' responses were framed as controlled but menacing. Jock's silence, initially intended to protect, was now scrutinized as a deliberate statement. Emotions ran high on both sides, and public opinion shifted like sand, unpredictable and chaotic. The tension even spilled into other social events. Parties, dinners, and gatherings became tests of nerve. Some people avoided invitations entirely, fearing backlash or confrontation. Others attended, watching interactions with heightened awareness. Every glance between Kirk and Mendices sparked whispers, while Jock's presence was often met with curiosity, suspicion, or relief, depending on who was observing. The club incident was no longer a memory, it was a reference point shaping behavior and perception in real time. One night, Kirk and Mendices unexpectedly crossed paths at a private event. The air crackled, a silent reminder of the club confrontation. Fans nearby held their breath, waiting for another explosion. But surprisingly, neither man acted impulsively. The room felt tense, the music fading into the background, while Jock stood off to the side, observing. Every eye tracked movements, every subtle gesture analyzed. The history between them created an invisible battlefield, and everyone could feel the weight of unresolved conflict pressing down. In private conversations that night, Kirk reflected on the club incident, admitting to close friends that while anger had driven his actions, the involvement of authorities had shifted the dynamic in a way he had not anticipated. He worried about reputation, family perception, and alliances that had been shaken. Mendices, in his own space, acknowledged the same, realizing that the confrontation had revealed more about loyalties than arguments. Jock wrestled internally with his decision, understanding that while it had prevented immediate violence, it had also changed relationships forever. By now, the club incident had become more than just a single night of conflict. It was a symbol of trust, betrayal, pride, and consequences. Every interaction, every post, every appearance seemed to reference that night, intentionally or not. The fallout had created a landscape where old alliances were questioned, new tensions emerged, and fans stayed glued to every development, eager for the next twist in a story that refused to resolve itself. Weeks turned into months, yet the echoes of that night at the club continued to reverberate. Kirk and Mendices had both learned, painfully, that a single moment of heated emotion could reshape public perception and personal relationships for the long term. Fans are shocked at how every interaction now carried the invisible weight of that confrontation. Every handshake, every glance, every photo shared online became scrutinized, dissected, and debated endlessly. Young Jock felt the pressure mounting, knowing that the ripple effect of his phone call was far larger than he ever imagined. Kirk tried to reclaim his narrative by carefully posting on social media, sharing motivational quotes and neutral images, but every post was analyzed for hidden meaning. Some fans praised him for his composure, interpreting calm captions as maturity. Others read into them as veiled digs at Mendices and Jock. The tension that had begun in a crowded VIP section now played out across screens and comment threads, feeding endless speculation and keeping the drama alive. Kirk's private messages were flooded with inquiries, offers of support, and cautious advice, forcing him to pick his words carefully. Mendices approached the situation differently, maintaining an appearance of calm and control while quietly signaling to close allies that the events of that night had shifted power dynamics. He reinforced his loyalty to certain people, expressed disappointment in others, and made it clear that boundaries had been crossed. The incident had become more than a heated argument, it was now a test of trust, one that revealed alliances and fractures previously hidden. He analyzed each response to his posts, each conversation, each subtle social cue, knowing that perception mattered as much as truth. Young Jock, meanwhile, struggled with isolation and the weight of responsibility. He replayed the decision to call the police, questioning whether it was truly necessary or whether it would forever mark him as disloyal in the eyes of his peers. Some close friends defended him, acknowledging the potential danger he had prevented. Others criticized his judgment, claiming he had unnecessarily escalated a private dispute into a public spectacle. Jock wrestled with these conflicting reactions, aware that his choice had lasting consequences beyond immediate safety. Industry insiders and promoters began adjusting their strategies, aware that the incident had become a touchstone for celebrity drama. Invitations, appearances, and collaborations were carefully curated, with awareness that any interaction could be framed within the narrative of the club confrontation. Kirk and Mendices navigated this new landscape cautiously, each move weighed for potential backlash, alliance shifts, or public interpretation. Every encounter, every photo, every public comment was scrutinized, reflecting how high the stakes had become. The public remained intensely engaged. Fans dissected clips, analyzed micro-expressions, and debated motives. Kirk's gestures were portrayed as strategic yet defensive. Mendices' demeanor was interpreted as controlled but intimidating. Jock's silence was read as either cautious foresight or covert betrayal. Emotions ran high, with alliances and loyalty continuously questioned in real time. The story, originally confined to a VIP section, had grown into a broader narrative of trust, reputation, and personal accountability. Behind the scenes, private conversations continued, but they were tense and measured. Kirk admitted privately that the police presence had changed everything, that the exposure had been humiliating, and that the relationships affected would never be quite the same. Mendices reflected on the incident as a revelation, confirming suspicions about loyalty, respect, and personal boundaries. Jock considered that his decision, though necessary in the moment, would remain a defining element of how others viewed him, whether fairly or not. The club incident became a benchmark, a reference point for future interactions. Every encounter, whether casual or formal, carried the weight of that night. Fans, friends, and industry figures remained on edge, anticipating sparks that could ignite renewed drama. Even attempts at reconciliation were fraught, with each side hesitant, guarded, and acutely aware of how perceptions could shift with one misstep. The conflict had become less about a single argument and more about the long-term implications of loyalty, betrayal, and public scrutiny. As Kirk, Mendices, and Jock navigated this new reality, the emotional stakes remained high. What began as a verbal clash in a crowded VIP section had evolved into a story of fractured trust, reputations in flux, and the consequences of choices made in a split second. The tension lingered, shaping behavior, relationships, and public perception. Fans are shocked not only by the confrontation itself but by the ongoing ripple effects, showing how a single night can change everything in ways no one ever anticipated. The tension that had quietly simmered for months now began to boil over in ways no one could ignore. Kirk and Mendices, despite attempts at composure, were repeatedly photographed in the same city, attending separate events but always under scrutiny. Fans are shocked at how even the slightest glance or coincidental presence sparked speculation. Every interaction, every body language cue was analyzed like evidence in a courtroom. The club incident had transformed from a single night of chaos into a defining moment that shaped their reputations and alliances for the foreseeable future. Young Jock felt the weight of his decision more acutely with each passing day. Casual conversations became minefields. Friends and acquaintances asked pointed questions, hinting at distrust or concern. Jock's own circle was divided. Some praised his quick thinking, claiming he prevented violence. Others scolded him, arguing that involving the police had escalated a personal matter unnecessarily. Jock replayed the night repeatedly in his mind, analyzing the timing, the words, the reactions, wondering if there had been a better choice, or if any choice could have prevented the fallout. Kirk, meanwhile, began drafting his own plan for damage control. He reached out to a few trusted friends and advisors, discussing statements, social media posts, and public appearances. He was keenly aware that any misstep could be amplified, used against him in fan debates, or misinterpreted as guilt or immaturity. Every word was considered, every gesture calculated. The humiliation of being publicly restrained by security and observed by authorities had left an indelible mark, one he was determined to navigate carefully moving forward. Mendices approached the aftermath with strategic silence. He let others speculate, let the social media storm rage, and refrained from overexposing himself. Behind closed doors, however, he analyzed every interaction, every post, and every whispered conversation. He reinforced his boundaries, clarified alliances, and subtly reminded those around him of the lessons learned that night. His patience, coupled with calculated appearances, made him seem controlled to the public, but privately he was acutely aware of how fragile relationships had become. The fans and media only intensified the pressure. Clips from the night, snippets of conversation, and blurred photos circulated online, dissected endlessly. Each post sparked debates. Who was in the right, who had overreacted, and who would face the long-term consequences. Jock's role became a central topic of discussion. Some called him a hero, others a traitor. Every narrative seemed plausible enough to stir emotion, and emotions ran high across platforms, keeping the drama alive far beyond the club walls. Industry insiders and promoters responded cautiously. Invitations, collaborations, and appearances were now considered with the backdrop of the incident in mind. Any gathering or event had the potential to reignite the drama. Kirk and Mendices both navigated these waters carefully, their interactions deliberate, measured, and loaded with subtext. Jock remained a wildcard, his decisions scrutinized not only for their past impact but for potential future consequences. Private conversations between Kirk and his allies revealed frustration and lingering anger. He spoke about the provocations, the public humiliation, and the altered perception of loyalty. Mendices, confiding in his own circle, emphasized respect, boundaries, and the confirmation of suspicions he had held for years. Jock reflected on his decision to call the police, balancing relief at preventing escalation against guilt over fracturing trust. Each man was shaped by the incident, each reaction layered with emotion, pride, and consequence. As time went on, the club confrontation became a benchmark for understanding celebrity dynamics, loyalty, and conflict. It influenced behavior at events, guided social media strategies, and colored fan perception. Every interaction, however mundane, was now framed within the context of that night. The drama had evolved from a singular event into an ongoing saga, a story of trust tested, alliances shifted, and reputations forever altered. The city itself seemed to hold its breath whenever Kirk, Mendices, and Jock were mentioned in the same sentence. Every sighting reignited debate, every social media post became a topic of speculation. The club incident was no longer just a memory, it had become a reference point for future conflicts, a cautionary tale of how quickly things could spiral out of control. Fans are shocked at how one night of anger and fear could redefine relationships, public image, and even career trajectories in ways no one anticipated. The story was far from over, and the stakes had never been higher. So, what do you think really happened that night at the club? Was young Jock a hero for calling the police, or did he cross a line that could never be forgiven? Kirk and Mendices are still navigating the fallout, and the family is left divided, leaving fans everywhere debating loyalties, betrayals, and who will come out on top. We want to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and tell us which side you're on, and don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed the drama. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next explosive update in this story that's far from over.